I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the disappearance of a pre-med college student on spring break in the Dominican Republic. She was with a young man she met at the resort when she vanished, but is this even a criminal case? Here's the story. Sudiksha Konanki is a 20-year-old from Virginia who is a junior at the University of Pittsburgh. She was on spring break in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic with a group of 6 female friends from her school. In the early morning hours of March 6th, there was a power outage at her hotel. So Sudiksha and a group of friends and others from the hotel headed towards the beach. Sudiksha is seen on camera, arm in arm with a student from another school who was at the resort, Joshua Riibe. While her friends reportedly returned to the hotel at around 5:55 a.m., Sudiksha did not accompany them. She stayed with Josh. The following morning, Josh is on video returning to the hotel without his shirt and without Sudiksha. This prompted a search and an investigation. Riibe has cooperated, but was not permitted to leave the island as investigators try to figure out what happened. Meanwhile, everyone is still wondering, where is Sudiksha? And there's a lot of elements of this story that are, you look at them and you're like, this could be an extremely tragic accident. But then you look at them a different way, you know, especially us in the true crime community, and you say, well, there are some things here that don't add up, some things that are suspicious. Well, Sudiksha's father was in the Dominican Republic just after his daughter went missing. This is what he said 1 week ago on ABC News' Good Morning America.
My daughter said that she's enjoying her trip, spring break, and everything was going okay. And she was really happy.
And I want you to take a look at this. This is Sudiksha's parents right now. These heartbreaking images, courtesy of the Dominican news outlet CNP for the New York Post. And you can see, it tears your heart. It tears your heart out. You know, as parents, we send our children away to school. You know, we want them to go and do things. We want them to go away on spring break with their friends. We always worry. And then worst case scenario for Sudiksha's parents. So on the way down there, the parents wanted this investigation, but now seeing them and the heartbreak and how everything has transpired, we're ready for the first question of our investigation, which is, what are Sudiksha's parents saying? What are they saying now about where this investigation is, what they want to see get done here? Here with us, he's been following all the developments in this case since the beginning, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, and he has experience in Dominican Republic laws and procedures, spends a lot of time down in the DR. Criminal defense attorney Darnell Crossland is with us as well. Great to have you both here. I want to read this, a statement from the parents, and this is via the New York Post. And this is an eye-opening statement, a really eye-opening statement. Both sides of the authorities have shown us how high the ocean waves were at the time of the incident. And both sides of the authorities have clarified the person of interest was not a suspect from the beginning. That was from the father, from the family home in Virginia. It is with deep sadness and a heavy heart that we are coming to terms with the fact that our daughter has drowned. This is incredibly difficult for us to process. We still have 2 young children to care for, and they are at a very tender age. In light of this, we respectfully request some space, time, and privacy to focus on healing and helping our children as we try to move forward with our lives. And difficult moment for them, Cody, for the parents. And this is an investigation where we've seen not just the Dominican authorities, but we've seen the FBI and the sheriff in Loudoun County, where they're from in Virginia. I mean, he went to work on this and was invested in this. What are we hearing from the sheriffs?
Absolutely, Vinny. This statement was released from the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office Public Information Officer Chad Quinn. He says, quote, "The disappearance of Sudiksha Konanki is tragic, and we cannot imagine the grief her family has been feeling. We have supported them throughout to ensure a rigorous, wide-ranging investigation. We have also met personally with them and continue to provide emotional support through our Victim Advocate Unit. Sudiksha's family has expressed their belief that she drowned. While a final decision to make such a declaration rests with the authorities in the Dominican Republic, we will support the Konanki family in every way possible as we continue to review the evidence and information made available to us in the course of this investigation. We thank the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Dominican National Police for their dedication to this investigation and collaboration." And of course, Vinny, there were hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement personnel on the ground there during what has been called the biggest search in the Dominican Republic's history. And as the statement said, the final decision to suspend that investigation is up to the Dominican authorities. Today is day 12. But also what's interesting regarding Sudiksha's parents is that, according to Daily Mail, Joshua Riibe was quoted in court today telling the court that Sudiksha's mother hugged him and told him thank you for saving her from that initial round of waves that he says in his story that they escaped and he turned back and Sudiksha was still knee-deep in the water. She gave him a hug and thanked him before her eventual disappearance. So what does that tell us? That means Sudiksha's family believes Joshua Riibe's story.
Yeah, Darnell, thinking about where the parents are in all this, and then where Dominican authorities are in all this, right? From your experience, what do you expect the reaction from folks down in the Dominican Republic who have undertaken this investigation and this search in light of what the parents? It seems like the parents have come to terms with the fact that this was an accidental drowning.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience that not only the Dominican Republic, but many of the other islands that rely on tourism for their economy would look at that news and that approach by her parents as a good one. Why? Because they don't want to scare off tourists. They don't want people to be alarmed. So the fact that the parents are looking at this as an accidental drowning and not a place where it's unsafe for tourists, I'm sure the authorities and the country as a whole welcomes that. I can tell you again from personal experience, there's an old song that says the ocean is our friend turned enemy. I've been in the DR for the last 15 years, and sometimes the ocean could be as calm as you can imagine, and at other moments it can just turn on you. And they put flags up at these resorts. It goes from red to yellow to green, and you have to watch those flags, and they could change in an instant. And so she very well could have drowned in this particular matter. And so the fact that the parents are saying, we're brave enough to ask for a declaration of death, and we want to move on with our other children, I'm sure it's good news and a healing for both the country, for the parents and the family of the suspect, and for everybody as a whole.
And how would this work? The procedures, there'd have to be a procedure for her to be declared dead. Like, if they never find her, there's still like that aspect of, okay, at what point is she officially declared no longer alive? I mean, we're very early in all of this for a missing persons case for that to happen.
Yeah, and so we have those situations even here in the U.S. And I'm involved in a case, the Draconis case here in Connecticut, and there was a missing person as well. And so what they did was they went to the probate court, and the probate court, after doing whatever investigations they are comfortable with, they could make that declaration. But it normally takes much longer time than we have in this particular case. Having spent time in the courthouse at Nagua, which is a town close to the capital, I also been to Palacio de Justicia, which is a palace of justice in the capital, which is the Santo Domingo. I spent many summers watching the proceedings. I can tell you that the police authorities have 48 hours upon which they can hold you before they have to let you go. In this particular case, when you watch the hearing today, the judge said his court wasn't the court to determine passport issues. and the gentleman is free to roam around the country on his own. He wasn't detained. And that's happened in the past where they detain you if they feel so in a hotel, but not necessarily to jail, or they can let you go free. Now, who makes the determination of the...
Well, let's do this, Darnell. Darnell, we're up against a break right now, but we've got more. We've got more of this investigation. And coming up next, we're going to jump right on what Darnell was talking about. What will happen to the so-called person of interest, Joshua Riibe?
Si me escuchan hablando así, porque como pueden ver en sus pantallas, estamos...
I said that glove won't fit OJ, and if you don't ask him to try it on, I will.
Why do an experiment for the first time in front of a jury? It was utter incompetence.
We believe the glove was his.
It was a setup.
They weren't fitting it.
That was O.J. Simpson's best acting.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Trial and Error. Why did OJ win? A Court TV original series. New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
All right, folks, there's Sudiksha. This is like the last video of this young woman. She's with Joshua Riibe. Everything looks fine, normal. I think he's taking a selfie. Some other people said they think it might be a drink. I'm not sure. But those are like the last moments right there. And then she vanishes shortly thereafter. Now, Joshua Riibe was being held in the Dominican Republic. They didn't put him in a jail. He just stayed at the resort but wasn't allowed to leave the resort. He got an attorney, and take a look at what happened when he showed up at the courthouse today.
Junior, esto tú me la vas a pagar. Espérate, me tengo
colegiado allá adelante. Ya cambiaron.
Por aquí, venga. ¿Dónde vamos?
Aquí estamos, señores. Lo estamos movilizando a otra sala porque por temas de espacio lo acaban de cambiar a la sala del Tribunal Colegiado de este Palacio de Justicia de Higüey. Si me escuchan hablando así, porque como pueden ver en sus pantallas, estamos aquí, los periodistas también, personas que andan con Joshua apoyando a las abogadas y a las autoridades. Está bastante custodiado. Joshua, ¿cómo te sientes con las autoridades dominicanas? Vamos a ver si podemos entrar en pánico.
Wow. Talk about cameras in the courtroom. Oh, my goodness. I never saw so many cameras in one courtroom. Unbelievable. So, obviously, this is a huge story down there. This is super high profile. Sudiksha has not been found. So that brings us to the next question in our investigation. And it's about the young man from Iowa. What will happen to Joshua Riibe? What's going to happen to him now? Still with us, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas and criminal defense attorney Darnell Crosslane. All right, Cody, he's in the courtroom. What happens in the courtroom?
Well, of course, Vinnie, that hearing was regarding Joshua Riibe's freedom request. Remember, his passport was taken by the Dominican authorities. Well, coming out of that courtroom, Joshua Riibe's freedom request was granted. That passport was given back. Remember, he was never charged with anything. He was only a person of interest for a amount of time during the investigation. Prosecutors say that he was not necessarily detained at the hotel where he was staying, but Riibe argued that he couldn't move freely without police surrounding him. But Vinnie, ultimately, out of that courtroom, Riibe will be coming home to the U.S. following this hearing.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about the United States as well to get the latest here, Cody. He was named a person of interest, and that came from the sheriff in Virginia, in Loudoun County. What is he saying about Joshua Riibe now?
Well, they have now, Vinnie, released a statement pretty much saying, quote, Joshua Riibe is no longer a person of interest. It's an ongoing investigation, but in that regard, he's not a person of interest anymore, and that he's been interviewed as part of the case. It's still not a criminal investigation in any way from our perspective. He is not considered a suspect by us. So, seems, Vinnie, that he's now off the hook, according to Loudoun County.
All right, Darnell Crossland first. That scene inside the Dominican courtroom, what are your thoughts there? I mean, that was complete madness. My guess is they've never had a story quite this big.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing about it is, you know, when you looked at that scene, if you've been to DR as much as I have, you realize that they have the Policía Nacional, which is the police that has jurisdiction to deal with Dominicans who may break the law. And then they have the Politor, which is the tourist police. And then they have the national police, and who dress in military gear. And when you looked at that scene, you had almost no room because they had the military police, the Politor, they had the Policía Nacional. They had all these police officers in there, and it was so intimidating, I'm sure, for all families. And of course, they were conducting the business in Spanish. And the judge made it clear that, you know, while they respect the media needs to respect the procedures. So it was just a madhouse, and I'm sure the temperatures were running high.
All right, let me ask you, Darnell, what are your thoughts about Joshua Riibe when he returns to the United States? Should he ever talk about this? Do you think he'll be advised just to never sit? Because he's going to get calls from everybody, right? All major media is going to track him down. Everyone's going to want to talk to him. They're going to want to get his story. They're saying it's an accident. What advice do you think he's going to get? What do you think he's going to do when he returns?
Well, I think the first thing you have to remember legally, when you look up the Dominican Republic law, and again, I studied the law there, and I've been there for a couple summers. The Dominican Republic specifically allows the United States to charge you with crimes that were committed in the Dominican Republic, even if they weren't illegal in the Dominican Republic. Now, we know murder is illegal everywhere, but just because he's off the hook in Dominican Republic, the second thing I thought about was if the investigation is ongoing and the U.S. finds that there's evidence to show that he may have been involved, he can be on the hook here in the U.S. So I think he has to tread lightly, but maybe not so lightly if they're going to close the investigation. But we don't know. But you don't want to say, well, I got off, you know, got away with, you know, I hate to say with murder there, and I can come up here and do all the interviews I want because there's no jurisdiction. If we find that something comes up and he confesses or there's some diary about this, he can be charged in the United States with a crime he committed in the Dominican Republic. So he has to tread lightly with that. And I'm just hoping it was an accidental drowning, because I would hate to think that it was more than that.
Yeah, you know, he did tell his story. He cooperated from the beginning. I mean, there was never a moment where where they said he stopped talking or wouldn't cooperate. Now, Joshua Riibe's father was with his son for the hearing. He reportedly was called as a witness. Telemundo got video of his arrival at the court for the hearing, and we're taking a look at it right there. There's his father, and that's a difficult spot as well for him in all of this, Cody, because Joshua Riibe's going to come back to the United States. Everyone's going to know about this story, and I'm wondering what tact, like I asked Darnell, what tact the family will take. Because everyone's going to be knocking on their door. Everyone's going to be asking him to tell his story. But we haven't seen him tell his story publicly, right? Just in the interviews with investigators.
Only in the interviews with investigators, only on the stand in the court hearing, not anything publicly, not anything on social media, no post about anything, no family friends or friends from his college that have said anything like, oh, he called me and said this or sent me this message. He's only said things to those Dominican officials, and again, in court during that hearing today where his freedom request was granted.
And Darnell, do you think there'll be a cloud of suspicion over his head, or do you think people are looking at this, the family of Sudiksha seems like they believe it was an accident, that At this point, at least, the investigation has never been a criminal investigation. He's never been named a suspect. Do you think that the public, whether it's social media or friends of his at school or just classmates at school, will let him live and not make this thing define his existence?
It's going to be a really, really, really tough road to hoe, because, as you know, the fact that he had so much media, probably he looks like he was befuddled. That it was just so much media, and people are only interested in just the news heading. They're not interested in what's behind that. So he's with a young lady who's now presumed dead, and he's the last person with her. He has to carry that, I think, for the rest of his life. The funny thing about the scene, why people are going to still be curious, is because it's one thing to drown, but the ocean comes and goes. It doesn't just, go and go and go and go. I'm surprised we haven't found a body. And because of that, if we found a body, then his friends will let him rest. But with no body, he's going to have to live with this, and he's going to be under some really extreme pressures and that dark cloud for a long time.
All right, Darnell Crossland, thank you so much. Always great to have your help. Cody's going to stick around. Coming up next, he's told his story, but does Riibe's story make sense? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the mysterious disappearance of Sudiksha Konanki, a hard-working pre-med student who was on spring break in the Dominican Republic when she vanished. Here's the story. It was supposed to be a dream vacation. White sand beaches, endless sunshine, and the thrill of spring break in paradise. But for 20-year-old Sudiksha Konanki, the trip to Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic turned into a chilling mystery. On March 6th, she was last seen in the waters with fellow tourist Joshua Riibe. Then, in a flash, she was gone. Search teams combed the coastline. Helicopters scanned from above, but there was no sign of her. Hours turned into days, and then hope began to fade. Had she drowned? One witness alone seemingly has the answer to this question, Joshua Riibe, who has cooperated with investigators and has a story to tell about what happened the night Sudiksha went missing. Again, the heartbreak for her family is immense. But there is one man who has the answer to all of this because he was there, Joshua Riibe, and he has told his story. I want to go through it with you, and this has been confirmed by ABC News. He said this to prosecutors: "A big wave came and hit us both. Then the tide pulled us into the ocean. When we surfaced, we tried to plead for help, but there was no one there. I held her under my arm and swam to get her out of the water. I was trying to make sure that she could breathe the entire time. That prevented me from breathing the entire time, and I took in a lot of water. When I finally touched the sand, I put her in front of me. Then she got up to go get her stuff, since the ocean had moved us. She was not out of the water since it was up to her knee. She was walking at an angle in the water. The last time I saw her, I asked her if she was okay. I didn't hear her response because I began to vomit with all the water I had swallowed. After vomiting, I looked around and I didn't see anyone. I thought she had taken her things and left. After I saw her walking away while she was walking in the water, I never saw her again. That's his story. That's the story of Joshua Riibe. It's relatively detailed and really sets a series of events that are taking place. A wave, the tide. He saves her. This story, he's the hero. He sacrifices his own well-being to make sure that he can get her to shore. But then she disappears after he saves her life. That brings us to the next question in our investigation. Does Riibe's story make sense? Now remember, we know they were both drinking, so that can make things not make a lot of sense. But this story was very specific. Joining me, he's been following all the developments in the case since the beginning, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, and retired FBI special agent with 20 years of experience executing searches. He is an expert in water searches and criminal investigations. Bobby Chacon is with us. Okay, Cody, let's walk through this first to get some more parts of the story and some more parts of the evidence that we've seen. Let's talk about before the disappearance. What do we know they were doing here?
Well, Vinnie, CDN television released these images of Sudiksha Konanki and Joshua Riibe at a bar before heading to the beach in the early morning hours of March 6th. Now, when we take a look at the video here, in that red circle to the left, that is Sudiksha. She's hugging a pillar of some sort. But if you look a little bit to the right, you see a guy that's hunched over, kind of leaning against a pillar as well with that cut-off white shirt on. That is Joshua Riibe. Now, as we watch this video as it continues, you see he's hunched over, and you mentioned that they were drinking. Doesn't look like he's having a fun night right now. He's hunched over, looks a little inebriated. He hasn't moved. Meanwhile, Sudiksha's down off to the left, talking to what is presumed to be her friends that she was with that night. You can see her hopping up and down. She has a lot of energy. She's not quite in the same state that Riibe is in, again, towards the top in that red circle that you see on your screen right now. And as the time progresses, we will see Riibe stumble here in a second. That really shows that he's under the influence of something. He's hunched right there.
I can see him hunched. The legs
there it goes right there.
Yeah.
You see that? That doesn't look fully sober, but who's to say? But
it looks like a spring breaker.
Looks like a spring breaker. He's having a good time.
A spring breaker. Okay.
Of course.
So this is beforehand. Then there are some images of them going to the beach as well.
Absolutely. Now, a little bit after this, a few minutes following this at the bar, we see them right here walking down this pathway. That's the entire group of friends. The two people in the back, that's Riibe on the left, Sudiksha right next to him. Those are the friends walking towards the beach. Right there, you see the couple hand in hand. Not Riibe, not Sudiksha, but that's Riibe and Sudiksha with the selfie. We've seen that image several times already. They're walking to the beach. This is around a little bit after 5 a.m. down there in the Dominican Republic. And now we see these are the friends coming back, eventually leaving Konanki and Riibe on the beach. And this image right here is ultimately the following morning. Remember in Riibe's story that he said he fell asleep on the beach and arrived back without Konanki, woke up and didn't see her there. So this is the walk to the beach. This is near the beach. Again, this is a little bit after 5 in the morning in the Dominican Republic.
Okay. And then what is found afterwards? She's wearing certain clothing, and some of her clothing was found afterwards, correct?
Correct. And the Dominican outlet CDN also supplied this image right here, these images. If you see on the left, that is Sudiksha's clothing. And you see on the right, you see that same article of clothing. Looks like one of those cover-up blouses that girls wear over their bathing suits when they go to the beach, go to the pool. It's found there on a lounge chair. You see it on her body there, confirmed by that Dominican outlet CDN. And the thing to note about this image here, Vinny, about that clothing is that officials say that clothing was not tampered with. It showed no signs of violence, any kind of forcible violence there. It was just simply found on a lounge chair, lying there as if someone had taken it off before going to get into the water.
On the lounge chair, not found in the water, not washed up from the water, but on the lounge chair. Okay, I think that's significant. Bobby Chacon tried to lay out his story, some of the video evidence, some of the things that have been found. Does his story make sense to you?
Well, I mean, it's supported by everything else we know, right? Nothing disputes his story. There's no physical evidence on the beach or at the scene that disputes anything he says, and that's really the issue. Can you dispute? And as you're going through an investigation like this, you take the statements, and then you go back and you take statements, and then you gather evidence, and you try to match things up. And in this case, they've gotten to the end where they're not going to get any more physical evidence off that beach or from that water, and there's nothing to dispute his version of events. So does it make sense? There's nothing to say it doesn't. It makes sense to me, and I've gone back and forth on this, looking at it over the course of these many days, and each of his interviews, and his story, as you put it up on the screen just now, does make sense to me. They went on that beach, a wave hit them. Look, I've done a lot of water rescue courses in my life. They always tell you approach the person from the back, because anybody that's in the water is panicking a little bit is going to take you down with them. So you always try to approach the person from the rear, because they're going to splash you. And as he said, he couldn't keep her up enough to breathe without himself going under the water. That's perfectly understandable. That's exactly the way we teach it. Do not go forward, go from the back, because that person will take you down with them. And so it makes sense what he said was he was trying to hold her up, but that didn't allow him to breathe as well. You can see how both of them were kind of inebriated and didn't have full faculties. You know, he gets out of the water, he looks back, and, you know, she disappears. She probably was vomiting herself. She probably swallowed a lot of water herself. So exactly what he was saying was happening to him was probably happening to her, only she hadn't gotten out of the water yet.
And that's the part of the story that I'm wondering about here. They have this very traumatic event, extremely traumatic. Before this wave hits them, it's a romantic moment, and they're apparently kissing, exchanging some kisses, right? Then they get pulled down and pulled out, screaming for help. No one's there. He saves her life. And right as he touches the sand after saving her life, he says she walks away, still in the water, to get her things. Her things are found on a lounge chair. So I'm trying to make that make sense to me.
Vinny, what he says was while they were in the water kind of moved them. So they probably moved quite a distance away from where they were, where they were, you know, when they went into the water. So as they're coming out of the water, they're a distance away from, say, that lounge chair where she put her covering on. So I think that's what he was referring to. The water moved them, and then when they got out, they had to walk back to the place where they entered the water. And I think at that point he was exhausted, vomiting, and he passed out. And you know, when you're that drunk, you just want to feel better and you just want to go to sleep. He thought she was able to exit the water. He falls asleep, wakes up, assumes she went back to her room, and nobody ever sees her again.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sense of, from her perspective, my life has just been saved by this young man. I'm going to walk away from him, number one. Walk away in such a distance that he can't even see me anymore, number one. But why would she stay in the water? Why would she stay in the water if the things that she needs are on the land, that are on the lounge chair that were found?
I think she got to a point, a depth of that water where she could actually put her hands on her knees, bend over, and probably vomit a lot of that water that she had just swallowed. And she didn't take those extra 2 or 3 steps to go from knee-deep water to ankle-deep water. She stayed probably where it was a little too deep, and then another wave may have taken her out.
All right. Bobby Chacon, he knows this stuff better than anyone, folks. That's why we have him on tonight. All right, both guests staying with us. Still to come. Why haven't they found Sudiksha yet?
Widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The celebrity stylist murder trial. Weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
All right, you're taking a look at part of the beach search, and this was posted to Instagram days after Sudiksha had disappeared, but the search was continuing. And take a look, you see the red flags there. Those are the red flags down in the Dominican Republic, meaning do not go in the water. Now, I want you to take a listen to this. This is the national spokesperson for the police. This is from March 12th, explaining who's involved in this search.
The main people involved are the staff of our Attorney General's office, representatives of the Public Prosecutor's office, who at the moment, in coordination with the FBI representatives, with our embassy liaison, with the National Police and personnel of the Central Direction of Investigations, are taking stock of this first stage of the search and investigations to see where we stand. After that, we will be able to provide more details.
It was all hands on deck. And take a look here. You see folks going out in the water on these boats. That's part of the search. That's part of the water search. They're also searching on the beach and in the brush that is next to the beach as well, doing these line searches. This was a significant undertaking. And it brings us to the next question in our investigation, which is an important one and probably a heartbreaking one for the family. Why haven't they found Sudiksha yet? Why haven't they? I mean, they did not shortchange this search one iota. I mean, it was, as you saw, the big story. Still with us, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas and retired FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon. Cody, how about the Dominican Republic authorities? What are they saying about who was involved in this search? How many assets were involved?
Well, Vinny, of course, they put out a statement pretty much outlining all the efforts they were undertaking with the hundreds of personnel, everyone that was involved. And the Attorney General, Yenny Berenice Reynoso, released this statement. She's, again, the Attorney General in the Dominican Republic. She says, quote, "We are using all of our resources to thoroughly investigate the disappearance of Konanki Sudiksha Chodari, and we understand the anguish this case causes to her family, Dominicans, and Americans." Now, she also added, quote, "As with any disappearance occurring under the circumstances of the case at hand, we are applying a holistic investigation protocol that examines all variables." Now, Vinny, what's also interesting in this investigation is that the Dominican Civil Defense Search and Rescue posted this statement to Facebook. And take a listen to this, quote, "Konanki's disappearance comes nearly 2 months after 4 tourists drowned in Punta Cana at the same beach where Konanki was last seen, according to the Dominican Republic Civil Defense Agency." Again, quote, "Again, strong currents swept the tourists off the Arena Gorda Beach, where the Riibe Republica Hotel is located." And they said this in a post, Vinny, on January 18th on Facebook. So according to this post, 4 people have gotten swept away on this beach. Seems like a pretty dangerous beach down there if you're not sharp.
Exactly. Let me bring back in Bobby Chacon. Bobby, let me ask you the question. Why haven't they found her yet?
Well, it's likely her body was actually, pulled out to sea and drifted. So I'd have to look at the tide tables, the wind, the currents. That you're between. So that's the eastern edge of the island where the Dominican Republic shares with Haiti. So you have the Atlantic Ocean on the north, or the north kind of east, and you have the Caribbean Sea to the south, kind of west. So you do have 2 huge bodies of water, and this is kind of a strait between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And so it's likely that she was pulled out and her body was kind of taken in one of those 2 directions, either towards the Atlantic or towards the Caribbean Sea. And as far as that announcement that was made January 18th, I read today in the paper down there, the Dominican Today paper on January 19th, they were still saying one of those people was still missing. So you see January 18th there. There's an article in the Dominican Today newspaper from the 19th of January that said, 6 people got washed away, 4 were rescued. 3 were rescued, 1 died, and 2 were still missing, and then another one was found in the water. But as far as that was, there was still 1 person missing. And this is a case where they were on it. That happened in the middle of the day. Again, another red flag day. They shouldn't have been in the water, but the civil authorities then got right on it. I mean, people witnessed it. Like you showed that crowded beach there with people not in the water, but on the beach. And so they were able to get right on this, and one of the bodies still slipped away. So you do have some cross currents, and you do have some undertows there. You know, those are very dangerous waters, as you know, was talking about this incident in March, and you only have to look back to January to find another similar incident. So these are dangerous waters, and bodies can be taken. You know, I would have thought when I first looked at this case that her body would have washed up by now, so I was a little skeptical. But then in researching it and reading about these waters a little more, I'm thinking it's possible that she was taken out, which doesn't mean she still won't appear, or unfortunately parts of her might appear and in time, but there's a good chance that she was kind of swept out to sea.
So, Bobby, are they looking for a body that would be floating? How does that work in a case like this? If someone has drowned, are you generally have to wait a certain amount of time? Is it expected that the body would surface?
What normally happens with bodies is they sink, then they float, then they sink again. And if you don't find them in that period where they're floating, so you sink, your tissue starts to deteriorate, that means you're off gas, and we're kind of like big balloons. So the gas gets trapped if we're not punctured, and so we float. But those gases will ultimately seep out of our bodies, and then we will sink again if we're not found. When you're talking about an ocean like this, where you have predation, where you have both sea mammals and fish that might, be predators in that water, that would tend to, attack a body or start to consume a body, which then would not let it float because you no longer have the balloon type situation. The body gets punctured by animals that are consuming it.
And what are your thoughts now that it's been this many days and she still has not been found, despite all the resources that were put into this case?
Yeah, I believe she's in the water. What state she's in, again, with predation, natural predation, salt water is very, very rough on, and moving salt water is like sandpaper. It's very rough on the human body any length of time. And so you'll have, advanced decomposition, which means it will come apart and will be consumed again by sea life. And so, if they find her, or, they'll find maybe parts of her eventually, but I would think that she's out to sea. And I think her family has kind of come to that realization that she most likely drowned.
So incredibly tragic as we're looking at these pictures of Sudiksha. And again, spring break, dream vacation, great times with great friends, taking a break from all the hard work as a pre-med student. And this is where we are. Well, obviously, big thank you to Bobby Chacon for joining us, giving us your insight. And Cody Thomas, as always, great reporting. Appreciate it. Folks, there are many ways to look at this case. Most of them end with Sudiksha vanishing in the ocean. But to me, that's really only half the story. It's the other half about what exactly were the circumstances that led to her being swept out to sea. Those are the circumstances that will tell me whether or not this was a crime or a tragic accident. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for the answers as the investigation continues.